All right, first I want to welcome everyone to Restore Retreat's very first field report webinar of 2022. This webinar series is focused on coastal related topics in the Bayou region, and today is a great kickoff to that. My name is Victoria Bork, and I am the Executive Director of Restore Our Retreat. As an organization whose mission is advocating for comprehensive coastal restoration in Louisiana's Bayou region, I couldn't think of a better way to start the year than with our state's annual plan of just that, coastal restoration and protection. So here to talk with us through that is the Executive Director of the state's coastal agency, the Coastal Protection and Restoration Authority, Mr. Bren Haase. Bren, thank you so much for taking the time to present on this today and giving us some insight into what's going on in the bayou, or down the bayou, as folks say around here. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that, Victoria. Appreciate the introduction, and it's certainly a pleasure to be here with the folks from Restore Retreat, and honored to be given the first field report of 2022. So I'm going to run through with you all a little bit about our annual plan, our upcoming plan for the revenues we anticipate to receive in the upcoming state fiscal year, and how we plan to expend those on projects, primarily projects along our coast, and then touch on a few projects that are either underway or have recently been completed or will be about to be constructed in the Bayou region. So I will jump into it with that. So, well, not advancing my slide here. There we go. All right. Thanks for bearing with me there. So I wanted to talk with you again about our annual plan. So this is what it sounds like. It's our plan for what we're going to be doing in the upcoming fiscal year. Obviously, it centers around the revenues we anticipate to receive and how we anticipate expending those dollars should they become available. This is not a budget. It's an authorization for us to expend funds, if they are received, as I mentioned earlier. It's something that gets approved by our board, the CPRA board, and then ultimately has to go through 4 committees within the legislature, and then passed by each chamber of the legislature each year. It provides not just an outlook for the upcoming year. It is a 3-year outlook. It includes project schedules and again, the expenditures on those projects. Something new this year that I would encourage all of you to take a look at if you're interested in the work that we're doing is an interactive webpage for our annual plan. You see it listed here. There's projects that you can click on. There's lots of resources associated with those projects. There's maps, videos, media reports, project fact sheets, and so forth. And so it's just a good spot, good place to get information about the annual plan. And of course, you can get a look at the annual plan itself and some of the summary documents associated with that plan as well. So we got a big year coming up. We've got, hopefully most of you are aware, we've got a 50-year, $50 billion master plan. That's kind of the high-level, broad outlook of priorities for our coast. And in order to sort of keep up with what we hope to accomplish within that master plan, you might think, well, you've got to spend about $1 billion a year, right, over that 50-year period. And so we've kind of been around close to that mark over recent years, but this year we expect to exceed that. And so we're anticipating our revenues and expenditures to be close to $1.3 billion that you see listed here. This pie chart breaks that out into various categories. One of the things that we're, of course, very proud of and want to point out to you is that over 80% of those expenditures, about $1 billion, will go to constructing projects, getting those projects on the ground for the citizens across our coast. I mentioned the plan is a 3-year outlook, and so you can see the FY24 and FY25 plans out there. You'll note that we're hovering around that $1 billion figure. We think in terms of expenditures over the next 3 fiscal years. But note also that that construction portion of the pie is increasing over that period of time as well. So again, good news for the citizens of our coast, getting more projects on the ground and expending a larger percentage of our dollars for constructing projects. What you see here are just the total project expenditure, revenues and expenditures. The numbers are the same. Anything we expect to receive, we expect to spend in the upcoming fiscal year. And again, the totals here. Kind of the thing to note here is that the the second, the third, fourth, and fifth row on this chart here are revenues and expenditures related to the BP oil spill. And about 60% of what we anticipate to expend this year is associated with those BP oil spill settlement dollars. So if you look at projects that we're implementing and what phase they're in, there'll be 5 projects in planning in FY23, 33 projects in engineering and design. Project value there is about $80 million. And those projects ultimately will benefit about 140,000 acres of our coastal wetlands. Moving on to projects in construction, there'll be about 76 of those. Again, we're expending about $1 billion on those projects. Those will benefit close to 60,000 acres of our coastal wetlands and about almost 110 miles of our levees along our coast to protect our citizens from storm surges. Then a number of projects you see in O&M. Of course, once we build a project, we don't just walk away from it. We, of course, want to maintain that project and monitor its performance as well. And so we do a lot of that for projects that have been constructed. So zooming in from that annual plan into the south central portion of the coast, you can see that there will be 39 active projects. 26 of those will be in construction, 11 in engineering and design, and 2 projects in planning. So they range in projects. Well, let me advance the slide. I'll show you some of the projects that we're speaking of. But those that will be in construction this year in the south central portion of the coast include projects in the Atchafalaya Basin, but also projects from Vermilion Parish all the way over to the eastern side of the south central portion of the state in Lafourche Parish. So projects like the West Fouchon Marsh Creation Project, Houma Navigation Canal Lock Complex Project, Elliott Jones Pump Station, Reach F South improvements, and some of those. I'll touch on a few of these in some of the highlights as I move on in the presentation. Mentioned projects in engineering and design. There'll be 11 of those. You can see them listed here, but the Bay Racker Sea Marsh Creation and Ridge Restoration Project, Murphy Lake Depth Restoration Project. That's one of those Atchafalaya Basin projects. St. Mary Back Levee Flood Protection Project, East Rainy Marsh Creation, GIWW Gate Design as part of the Morganza Gulf system, and so on. So in terms of the timeline, a draft plan was presented to our board last month, back in January. We're in the midst of a public comment period right now that closes on the 26th. We've had 4 public meetings to present this information to folks, and obviously there are other resources that I mentioned earlier, our website and so forth, to gain access to the draft plan and for folks to be able to take a look at it, review that, and provide those comments to us. That comment period, as I mentioned, will end on the 26th. We'll take those comments into consideration. There'll be some adjustments between the draft and the final, of course, based on the comments that we receive. And then a final plan will be presented to the board at our meeting on the 16th of March, so just about a month. And upon approval, if approved, that plan will then be submitted to the legislature. Again, we'll be before 4 committees within the legislature. Don't know of any other agency that has to sit before so many committees and have as much, quite frankly, legislative oversight as we do. But we welcome that. Obviously, that's not a complaint. But nonetheless, it's a long process to get an annual plan approved each year. So I mentioned the deadline a couple of times. I'll not mention that again. But if folks have comments they'd like to submit to us, they can do that in 2 ways. They can be emailed to us at coastal@la.gov. Or mailed to us at the address you see at the bottom left-hand side of the screen. There's CPRA 2023 Annual Plan, 150 Terrace Avenue, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, 70802. I mentioned the Atchafalaya Basin projects a couple of times, and you'll see that address on the bottom right-hand side of the slide there. So as we're developing our annual plan, we're also developing an Atchafalaya Basin program annual plan that will be part of this overall annual plan, but it's a bit of a separate process. That's kind of a relic of how the Atchafalaya Basin program has been run in the past. But nonetheless, that's being developed right now and is out for public review and can be reviewed. And again, comments can be received or submitted through that address there. So I just want to talk about some recent activities, obviously recent events within the Bayou region, and none that probably looms as large on folks' minds I know on my mind as this past hurricane season, Hurricane Ida, and what it did to our coast and to our, again, to the Bayou region in particular. But it's the fifth strongest hurricane to hit the continental United States. Most of this is stuff that you all have probably heard numerous times, but just to set the stage, of course, it struck Louisiana around Port Fourchon on August 29th. Category 4 with winds gusting to 150, by some estimates up to 180 and pushing 200 miles per hour. Storm surges across our coast anywhere from 8 to 13 feet. More than 1 million homes were without power. Obviously, tremendous damage in the Bayou region in particular, in the Houma, Lafourche, Terrebonne regions on the all the way up through the river parishes and even into the North Shore, of course. You all are keenly aware of the damage that occurred within the Bayou region, I know, and there are still folks that are struggling with housing as we speak. So just a devastating storm. You can see some of the storm surges here. You can also see, interestingly, the benefits that our Bear Islands provide to us. And so you can see that storm surge that's attenuated behind the Caminada Headland, Elmer's Island area, and behind Grand Isle. This was such a strong storm. Of course, some of that repropagated as the storm moved inland along the levee system, the La Rose de Godel levee system on the east side of Bayou Lafourche. Thankfully, there was some just minor overtopping of that levee system, but it performed well. Had it not, of course, the damage as bad as it was in this region would have been much, much worse. And certainly there would have been some loss of life associated with that. So thankfully that did not happen. Just talk a little bit about Grand Isle. Of course, this was one of the worst hit locations along the immediate coast. You can see this is the west end of the island, looking from the northeast to the southwest. This is where LA1, the truck you see at the bottom of your screen, is on LA1 and sort of the big bend that you take to the east as you approach the island. But you can see some of the destruction, of course, there. Some of the efforts that were undertaken post-storm to shore up what's on the island in terms of the burrito levee, the dune system and levee, they call it, as it's called, in that area. And so you can see some of that. You can see on the right-hand side of your screen there, one of the breaches that occurred in one of the repairs to that burrito that was made. This is a video, I believe, that doesn't look like it wants to. Let me see if I can't get this to play. But this is looking at the dune or the burrito levee. I don't think I'm gonna be able to get the video to play, so apologies for that, folks. But this is another look at one of the breaches in the burrito levees, looking from east to west. You can see the work that's being done there to place super sacks and sediment in one of the breaches there. This was done pretty soon post-storm, obviously, to close some of those breaches that occurred on the island. It was a huge effort, really, that lots of partners were involved in, and including DOTD, Pontchartrain Levee District, Department of Corrections, National Guard, GOSEP, who am I forgetting? And Jefferson Parish, and of course the town of Grand Isle, to get this back in place. Most of these breaches, it's kind of an interesting point to make, occurred at areas that were crossovers, where roads dead ended, essentially at the backside of the levee, and folks visiting the island across the levee in those locations. That's where the weak points have occurred and where most of the breaches occurred there. So some of the activities that CPRA was involved in and is involved in during hurricane season, you can see this is specific to Hurricane Ida, but lots of pumps being distributed to parishes to help dewater areas, getting those pumps in place ahead of time so that they can be mobilized quickly and used to help dewater areas that need to be dewatered. Lots of sandbags and super sacks. I just mentioned that. We're monitoring floodgates, of course, are close to 300 of those across the state. Many of those, of course, were closed. Almost all of those were closed. Almost 500 of those were closed during Hurricane Ida. And we assist in getting generators to areas to power things as well. So talk a little bit about Bayou Lafourche. Of course, talking to you all in the Bayou region. This is the Bayou, as you're well aware. Lots of activity has occurred, of course, on Bayou Lafourche in the recent past and is going on right now. So you see this list of things that many of you are familiar with, including modifications to railroad crossing, lots of dredging that has occurred in the area, pedestrian crossings, removal of water control structures, and so forth that has occurred. Recently, we have worked very closely with the Freshwater District to do some unique financing, if you will, and be able to advance the construction of a new pump station in Donaldsonville that will provide about 1,000 cubic feet per second of Mississippi River fresh water to the bayou. So all of the improvements and the activities that you see listed on the screen here were to prepare essentially the bayou to receive that additional flow. That'll be a huge benefit, obviously, in the bayou region in terms of both industrial and drinking water, but also to combat the effects of saltwater intrusion, right? Saltwater coming not only up the bayou, but into the wetlands adjacent to the bayou as well. So that project I believe it went to bid last month, or this month, excuse me. And so hopefully we'll see some construction activity on that in the very, very near future. That's being led by the Freshwater District. So some other project highlights in the region. I'll start in St. Mary Parish. Again, we have a video here, but none of these videos don't appear to be working for some reason. This is a view of the Sycamore Point State Park. And a lot of work's been done here through the oil spill settlement dollars. Some of the rocks that you see along Quintana Canal were placed as a result of this project. About 18,000 cubic yards of sediment was placed on the beach to help refurbish that. Interestingly, that sand was removed from the Chafalaya River. So an area that has too much sediment, we were able to solve a problem there by getting some sand out of the river, but solve a problem here by adding that sand in a place that needs it. There's also a boardwalk under construction, and I wish my video was working because we've got some good shots of that, but we'll have to take a rain check on it. But and then there'll be some improvements to the road, parking areas, and RV areas as well. This is a shot of the Bayou Chene floodgate. This is also in St. Mary Parish. This is it under construction. We're very nearing completion on this project. The barge gate was floated into location over the weekend, actually, and the pin was put in place to the hinge pin, if you will, was put in place. So the barge is there now, and this project should be complete within the next couple of months. This will assist with both hurricane storm surges and backwater flooding in a 5-parish region, including St. Mary, Terrebonne, Assumption, Ascension, Iberville parishes as well. So moving along, we'll go to move into Terrebonne Parish and talk about the H&C lot complex a bit. Again, this was supposed to be a video, but we'll have to just rely on the still here. This is the groundbreaking for the lot complex itself. So we have funding approved through the Restore Act to construct the lot complex. This is what some people have referred to as the crown jewel of the Morganza of the Gulf risk reduction system. But it's also an integrated project. It's a project that's got environmental benefits in terms of delivering fresh water to many areas in Terrebonne Parish that don't receive those right now. But and also, of course, it's a part of that risk reduction system that's so important to this portion of our state. So construction should begin on that in the near future as well. This is a shot of the West Belle Pass headland. So Belle Pass by Lafourche is essentially, this is sort of an aerial view. There's a drone flying here. Directly under that drone would be Belle Pass. And so you're looking from east to west. About 100 acres was created here of beach and dune. This is sediment that was dredged as part of was one project with 3 locations: Trinity Island and East Timberlair Island. Trinity East and Timberlair Islands are also being constructed as part of this project as well. So all told, about 11 million cubic yards will be dredged from Ship Shoal and placed in not just West Belle Pass, but on the other 2 locations that I mentioned earlier, creating about 1,000 acres of beach and dune habitat there. So looks like since my video is not working, we're not going to get a shot of this one, but there is work going on in Bayou Decad as well. Marsh Creation Project sediments being dredged from Lake Decad and pumped into the area just north of Bayou Decad and west of the lake there to create almost 500 acres of marsh in that region. And so that's, of course, one end of sort of a critical land bridge between Lake Decad and Lost Lake, essentially. And so this is a long anticipated project that we're excited about getting on the ground and completing in the very near future. Some other projects similar to the state park project I mentioned earlier, a recreational use natural resources damage assessment project or enhancements to the Pointish NWMA. You see some new landings and docks or piers here that folks can use to access the WMA. They can fish, crab, obviously, from these things. A number of projects like these have been built along the coast at Rockefeller Wildlife Refuge by Signet, several at Pointish. They've been very popular and been successful projects as well. Shifting back into Lafourche Parish and talking some more about some risk reduction features, you see 3 projects that are underway here. Almost 4 miles of levee improvements and levee lifts. So this is, of course, the region that we showed you earlier related to Hurricane Ida that was just in, the direct hit from the highest storm surges within the state that were experienced as a result of Hurricane Ida and perform well. But these projects will help to shore up those levees, raise them to a degree as well, and make them even stronger than they were for Hurricane Ida. Again, folks, I apologize, another video malfunction here, but Kim Headland's back barrier marsh creation project is going on. So one of the projects I mentioned earlier was at sort of Elmer's Island Reach. We've done Caminada headland work, rebuilding the beach and dune there over the last several years, and we're now rebuilding the marsh behind that headland. So that work is ongoing right now. There's dike work that's being constructed right now, containment dike work, and hope to have a dredge on site sometime in the near future to begin pumping sediment and get that project on the ground as well. West Grand Terre, another project in the region that's under construction. And this is really one of the projects that was most heavily impacted by Hurricane Ida last year. So this project was under construction. What you see here is a lot of sand that was placed on the beach that was washed back over the island into what was planned to be the marsh creation area. And so additional bar areas are being identified for this project, and it will construction will resume shortly on this to help rebuild that beach that we've seen or that had been built prior to Hurricane Ida. So this may raise a question: Are we throwing good money after bad? And I just wanted to point out that really the only major impacts that we saw and have seen historically from hurricanes, but certainly from Hurricane Ida, were for projects like this one that were actually under construction. So projects that were completed, were on the ground, have had a chance to vegetate, by and large performed quite well. That West Bell Pass area that I showed you, did pretty well. Queen Bess, which is just north of here, Queen Bess Island, performed very well. And the headland work that was done and had been completed performed quite well. And so even up further up basin, projects like the Little Lake Marsh Creation Project, again, performed very well. So what we see is that when we're able to get a project on the ground, have it established for at least some period of time, they're very resilient to hurricanes. It's unfortunately the case, however, when you have a project under construction, sediments loose, if you will, unconsolidated, there can be some significant impacts to those. And thankfully, we've been fortunate to be able to salvage those projects and to continue their construction and get something useful on the ground for the future. And so that concludes my presentation today. There's much more going on, but I just wanted to hit a few of the highlights. But Victoria, I believe we've got some time. I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody may have. And thank you all for your attention and for your time today. We certainly appreciate all you do as an organization, and happy to be here and share some of that with you. So, Victoria, I'll turn it back over to you.
Well, this was awesome. Thank you so much, Bren, for taking the time to do all of this. It is so encouraging to see all of the work that's being done coastwide, but specifically in today's webinar with a focus on the Bayou region. One question, I do have a few questions, but one question that I get frequently is, and you did touch on this a little bit, But what is the difference between the annual plan and the coastal master plan? I think some folks think of it as maybe being two distinct, unrelated things. And while they are two distinct things, they do have synergies and work into one another. So I was wondering if you could kind of touch on that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question, and I'm glad you are providing an opportunity for me to answer that, because it is a question we get a lot. So the coastal master plan is something that we update used to be 5, now every 6 years. So it's a living document, but it's really the high level. Well, let me back up. Master plan is something I tend to do to try to boil it down really in a nutshell. It's two things, right? It's a way for us to make hard decisions about what the right priorities for our coast are. So it's a process that we go through to develop projects, select projects, and prioritize what the right things for our coast are in a constrained environment. So we don't have all the money in the world that we would love to expend on our coast. So considering some real world constraints, like how much sediment we have and how much money we have, what are the best decisions for our coast? So the master plan is the process we go through to make those tough decisions. And then it's a list of those projects. So it's the way we select the projects, and it's a list of projects. And the annual plan really tears off of the master plan. Of course, the annual plan we put together every year. And it's our plan for expending the dollars that we expect to receive to implement projects that are identified in the master plan. So that really fundamentally is what the two things are. And I can elaborate if you'd like, but that kind of in a nutshell is the difference between the two.
No, I think that was perfect. That was a very good like elevator pitch type of differentiation between the two. That is makes it easier for us as an advocacy organization to be able to explain the difference and the importance of the two, right? And why residents of Louisiana should care and then pay attention to these kind of things. So kind of on the same subject of residents in Louisiana, I am so excited to see the nearly $1.3 billion commitment to our coast through this year's annual plan. That's incredible. But with such big opportunity comes big responsibility. And if Louisiana citizens, especially who live on the coast, want to put into some of that responsibility, what's the best way for folks to get involved?
Well, there are a number of ways. Obviously, getting involved with organizations like this, like Restore Retreat, is a good way to do it. I think really being educated in terms of our master plan and kind of that process and what goes on, behind that, and then getting involved in with the work that CPRA does. And one of the best ways to do that is really, I think, to be familiar with our annual plan. And if you like it, we'd certainly love to see you at the legislature supporting us in those committees that I mentioned. And if you don't, certainly talk to us, give us some comments about it. And we're always happy to hear from our stakeholders and citizens that live along the coast. Nobody knows the coast as well as they do, of course. And so I think those are some ways for folks certainly to get involved. There are there's a lot of opportunity with a lot of the NGOs that are involved in the coast, of course, in terms of doing activities, cleanups, plantings, and those kind of things that are important as well.
Thank you so much. As a nonprofit, I have learned over my years involved in coastal that there is this beautiful synergy between all the different entities that are involved in this industry. It truly takes a village, and being able to be the liaison between community folks in the state and business partners and everything else has definitely been an honor and privilege, and I appreciate all the help that y'all give constantly in the different outlets that folks can be engaged in. So I actually share an office with Henri Boulay. I know that you know him, and he has a question for you.
Hey, Bren, how you doing?
Hey, Henri.
Hey, thank you for all the info today. Hey, so I was tuning in yesterday virtually for the CPRA meeting, and great presentations. Thank you for that. And at the end, I know Chip asked you about, a list of that CPRA will put into the final version of the annual plan for surplus dollars. I also know, in talking to Wendell this week, that you spent some time with him looking at the South Lafourche levee system and the tremendous new vulnerabilities it has at the toe of the levee, especially on the east side from, Ida storm surge and wave action. And I was just wondering, are you guys thinking of trying to commit any surplus dollars to that system, due to Ida? I'm not sure how that works, if Wendell can get FEMA money to at least repair the damage to the toe of the levee.
Yeah, that was good question, Henri. And so the answer to the question, I guess, is yes. The short answer is yes. So we are, as I mentioned, that side of the levee was really where most of the land loss occurred as it relates to Hurricane Ida. So 100 square miles or so of marsh was lost. I know there's a lot of concern about the vulnerability of the levee there now without that wetland buffer in front of it. And so we are anticipating, and part of our surplus request will include the restoration of the Little Lake rim and some marsh in that region that would help buffer the levee system on that east side. So yes.
Great. That was my only question. Thanks so much. And thank you for the continued work you and Chip and the whole team at CPRA is doing for our coast.
Thank you.
Okay, we do have a question that came through in the chat from Catherine at St. Mary Excel. She says, thank you for speaking today. When you said the Bayou Chene floodgate would be complete in a few months, do you have any date, like a more specific date?
I don't off the top of my head, but I do think it will be within just a matter of a month or two. I believe the end of March, but don't hold me to that. But I can certainly find that a specific date for you, Victoria, and I can get back to you to distribute that answer. Okay,
great. Catherine, I'll be in touch as well. And I have a fun question for you, Bren.
Uh-oh.
Okay, since you started at CPRA, what has been your favorite project or one that you're most proud to have accomplished or worked on personally?
Wow, that's a good question. Well, so I think the most interesting project, I'll put it that way, that I've been involved in to date it's really been two projects. It's the mid-basin diversion projects. Now those aren't constructed yet. We're in the midst of getting those to a point where they can be constructed. We hope as early as the end of this year, one of those at least at the end of this year. But so far, I think the work that's been done on those has been probably as interesting as anything that we've done, and as complicated as anything that we've done, and probably about as rewarding as anything we've done. I would add, I mean, they really all are. It's like asking which one is your favorite child, right? The work that's been done on the barrier islands has been just tremendous, and to see it evolve over the years, through work that's been done for the last 30 years to kind of what we're doing now, has been really rewarding. The first time that we used Mississippi River sediment to restore a barrier island was a pretty neat deal. That was very, that's something that I think I'm very proud of. Yeah, I think that's how I would answer that.
Good answer. Well, first of all, wait, let me ask you a follow-up question.
Yeah.
How long have you been at CPRA? So we know the project context of the timeline you're talking.
Well, I've been with CPRA since CPRA was not CPRA. And so I started actually my career right out of grad school at DNR, in the Coastal Restoration Division at DNR at that time. I did leave there for a time, was still involved in restoration in Louisiana with a federal agency, primarily doing work with the QIPRA program, and then came back to what was still DNR, but was soon to change to OCPR and then CPRA at the time. So all told, it's been close to 20 years. 25 years really working in coastal Louisiana, but about 20 years of that it's been with some form of CPRA, DNR, OCPR, CPRA.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, your time is just an example of how far we've come, right? Where we started, or since your time being involved in coastal, you've had a front row seat to just how far we've come in all of this work, and encouraging steps going forward to continue the restoration and protection of our coast and the communities that reside there. I really appreciate your leadership in all of this, as well as all of the innovative work that you guys are doing, like making this interactive webpage for folks to really get involved and have a good visual and overview of how these projects impact them directly. And it's definitely a good tool for us to use to put out in the communities as well. So I thank you so much for your time today. I don't see any more questions in the chat box, so I think you've done a great job.
Well, I hope that's what that means, and again, appreciate the time with you all. And Victoria, I'll get you an answer on Bayou Shane so that you can get that out to Catherine.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time today, and everyone, thank you for hopping on. I will be posting this recording to several different of Restore Retreats outlets, so be on the lookout for that. And we thank you so much. Hope the rest of your week is a great one and you have an awesome weekend. Don't forget, Bren, if you want to touch on this before we close out, the comment period ends next week, right?
It does, yeah. The week from Saturday on the 26th. So encourage all of you to dig into the annual plan as much as your heart desires, and obviously we're interested in hearing any feedback that you might have on it.
Okay, awesome. And Restore Retreat is more than happy to work with anyone to assist in that as well. So we thank you for your time, and y'all have a great rest of your day. Thanks.
Great, you too. Thank y'all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.